So during game development, various in-progress prototypes are created and pushed to hardware, often passed to test or be used as an interim demonstration of the game's current state. These often occur at developmental milestones such as completing a major feature, or sometimes just as regularly spaced out sprints. However, the exciting part about prototypes is that they give you insight into the design process that led to the final version of the project that you know and love. Often, messages and other forms of communication from the development team are left in these prototypes. Placeholders and assets that would later be scrapped in the final game are taken out, and occasionally we'll even find access to special debug tools within the game. Just across the previous year, 4 prototypes were uncovered or leaked following different periods of production for the Game Boy Advance title Dragon Ball Z Boost Fury, developed by Webfoot Technologies. And these range from very early versions of the game to almost nearing completion, and with that comes a lot of interesting differences from the main game. The most immediate difference between each of these prototype versions is the game's title screen, which changes on each version. The first is under its original working title, The Legacy of Goku 3, and is still using the title screen music from The Legacy of Goku 2, which gives us the not so surprising insight that the game was built directly off of The Legacy of Goku 2's engine. We also get some visuals that are pulled from the show, but focus around Goku, Majin Vegeta, Gohan, and Gogeta, and so there's no Majin Buu in sight. This fits a lot within the concept of legacy and lineage, showcasing Goku and his sons along with Vegeta and Trunks, though Trunks is technically fused with Goten here. It's clearly not supposed to be the final title screen, but it is of much better quality than the following title screen that you'll see in a second. Our second title screen gives us another working title for the game, Dragon Ball Z Fusion, The Legacy of Goku 3. Here we see Goku, Vegeta, and Vegito with the branding focusing more on the fusion aspect of the Buu arc, still with no Majin Buu in sight though. The United States would have gotten Budokai 2 at this point in development, with Vegito being prominent on the cover. The Majin Buu arc would have also finished airing its first run only about a year ago, which would be many fans' first introduction to major fusion characters like Vegito and Gotenks. And with fusion being one of the major features in this game, it makes sense to jump on the concept of fusion. The third stand-in screen is very similar to the second iteration, but the game has now transitioned under the title of Dragon Ball Z Boost Fury. The actual titular character of Majin Buu finally makes an appearance here. Not much to say about this one given how similar it is to the previous one that I just showed, but it still makes me wonder what was the last straw that made Webfoot Technologies drop the Legacy of Goku from the game's name. The final release title screen that we all know, in my opinion, does the best job. The legacy aspect of this game is showed with Goku and his children, as well as Vegeta and Trunks being present on the screen. Buu is front and center, though it's interesting that they focus on Kid Buu as a major villain when Fat Buu and Super Buu are much more prominent throughout the actual game. And the actual Dragon Ball in the background is a nice touch too. In terms of the gameplay for these prototypes, they tend to go to different points in the story. For instance, the first prototype we have under the Legacy of Goku 3 name only allows you to progress to the point where Gohan is supposed to fly to school so very early in the game, whereas the later prototypes let you get close to the very end of the game. These prototypes are often less than stable too. I found myself sometimes getting soft locked in the game and unable to progress no matter how much I tried. You'll also occasionally encounter some weird quirks such as this placeholder cat that's used to fill in where there are no character portraits, or Goku being used as a stand-in enemy for when enemies are not fully programmed yet. Now, the true fun with these prototypes starts when you get access to debug menus. See, when developing games, developers usually aren't playing the game from start to finish every time they need to test something. That would take a long time, especially in the Legacy of Goku games, which utilize very annoying level gates that force you to grind before moving to story events. Entering the button sequence, left bumper, right bumper, up, down, left, right on the tile screen will launch the debug menu in all versions of the prototype that I've tried. Here we're greeted with some sound and music test options and a map test option. The map test option is essentially a level select that allows us to jump to most screens that are viewable in the game. In the bottom corner of many of these prototypes and in the game's tile memory is a state code that uniquely identifies each room. The first number helps group portions of the game into specific zones, though the ordering is not always as clean as you'd think. The second number indicates the specific screen that we're on. For instance, each room in the Sun family house is under the same zones, but each room has its own screen number. And finally, there's the variation tag. Sometimes small story events will require the same room but under slightly different configurations. Variations help mark these small changes. And when I say you can get access to nearly every room in the game, I mean nearly every room. This includes cutscenes such as the Dragon Ball Z logo from the introduction cinematic and the episode screen that's meant to mimic the show. It's funny because you can walk around in these scenes just like any old regular screen. At least for the later prototypes, jumping into a level from this debug menu will grant you access to all characters, along with increased stats to help prevent you from getting immediately jumped and defeated in a single hit. There's also a few rooms that are either in the very early stages of development or were scrapped altogether, such as an 8-bit recreation of Mr. Satan vs. Cell that might have been a little fake cutscene or minigame in West City. Stages that were in development, such as the Fusion Reborn portion of the game, are generally mapped out, but are using flat placeholder tiles. Interestingly enough, there's actually an icy winter area that doesn't make it into the final release of the game, likely meant to hold a fight against Super Android 13 and possibly mini boss fights with Android 14 and 15. To top off these prototypes, however, is the debug test arena. This basic arena was used more than likely to test enemies and characters as they were gradually being developed within the game. You can quickly swap characters and open up a menu to spawn in different enemies. Some enemies function as you would imagine, though other characters will spawn in Goku, who seems to be just the default placeholder character. Curiously, we also get entries for a few characters that don't exist in the final game. This includes Android 13, 14, and 15, who were movie-only characters for the anime, along with Super Android 13. Just as mentioned before, selecting any of these again will spawn Goku or other enemies, likely because they were not properly programmed in yet. However, in a specific prototype, selecting Super Janemba will actually instead spawn in the wrong enemy, Super Android 13. This was a major find, a whole unused boss fight that never made it to completion. I do wonder how much of his design was used to vector towards the League's more popular character Broly, who is featured in the final version of the game, but weirdly not in this prototype. The androids strike me as an interesting choice to implement given their movie takes place in a timeline closer to the Android and Cell saga, which the Legacy of Goku 2 covers. Though, to be fair, the movie Super Android 13 did not get dubbed by Funimation until 2003, the same year that the Legacy of Goku 2 released. This enemy is clearly unfinished and unbalanced, being nearly unbeatable in a fair fight. He's incredibly fast and has a grab attack that will break you out of whatever you were currently doing. I tried to lure him into a small hallway where he couldn't reach me so that I could spam Ki Blast at him, but he just would not take the bait. So everything I was able to do here, I was also able to do for the Legacy of Goku 2, which has a similar debug menu, though that has to be activated using a cheat rather than an input combination. However, the only prototypes available to run the debug menu against are nearly to final completion, and thus there's not a lot of interesting new content to explore. Maybe some earlier versions will eventually get leaked, giving us a look into the development cycle of the Legacy of Goku 2. But anyways, this was a longer video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Here on this channel I like to talk about Dragon Ball gaming, though I'll probably start expanding to other anime in the near future. If you want to see more of these types of videos, please subscribe and maybe like this video. It really helps motivate me to put out more videos like this, and also just gives me an idea of what kind of content my subscribers are into. Anyway, look forward to more videos. Bye. Okay, so as I was putting together this last video on Boo's Fury prototypes, I started to come across new information that may or may not make it into that video, so we'll see. Specifically related around Super Android 13. And so as I was playing the last time, I noticed that you can't technically kill Super Android 13 in the debug arena. He'll say like, hey, you leveled up, you got the points for it, but no death animation plays, and so he'll continue fighting you. But I did learn, and I don't know why I didn't think to check the multiplayer mode inside of Boost Fury. Most people don't even know that the multiplayer mode exists, but apparently Super Android 13 is also playable in this mode, so you can control him, you can fight against your friends, because in this mode you have access to, you know, the regular characters, Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, all the heroes, but you also have access to some of the bosses. So you have access to Broly, and you have access to Boo in his different forms, but apparently Super Android 13 was meant to be a character in here, and so playing as him, if you're defeated in this mode, you get to see his death animation, which I think is pretty cool. Additionally, playing through the end of this prototype, so beating the final boss, which is Kid Buu, you are given a small blurb that kind of identifies like, hey, that the fight against Super Android 13 was supposed to be an end-game boss scenario, and the text says, but the adventure isn't over yet. Rumors abound of strange activity in the northern Arctic regions, which obviously is supposed to play off of what happened in the movie, kind of like the final fight area. Additionally, and this isn't related specifically to the prototypes of Boost Fury, but I was looking online, and I was able to actually get access to Webfoot Games, Webfoot Technologies, their internal development page for Boost Fury. Apparently there was no authentication or anything, so I could just access it. This one is dated around 2004, 2005, but in it we have some internal concept art. So you have art, for instance, for the zombie, the skeleton, biomech, cyborg, and mechanoid enemies. And then you also have portrait sketches. So this shows kind of like the process of bringing the actual full sketch to the portraits that we see within the game. And these portraits, you can tell, are created by a entity separate from whoever was designing the art for the enemies. In the Legacy of Goku 2 doc, we actually got to see some of the artists like working on the enemy design, so we kind of have a byline there. But it does interest me, like, who was designing these portraits. Currently we don't know, as far as I know, but it would be interesting to find. But yeah, that was all the other information that I found. If I find some more, it might just have to go into a separate video. All right, bye.